Hello friends, welcome back in VMware Cloud Foundation Deep Dive webinar series. Today we will be covering part 3, which is primarily the VCF deployment. Well, before we start, don't forget to subscribe my channel and like and share my video with your friends. And if you have any query, you can write back us on nextgencf@gmail.com, or you can put your comments after seeing this video. Thank you very much. So let's get it started with the VCF deployment. So in part 3, we'll be discussing the VCF, VMware Cloud Foundation Day 0 tasks. That's primarily is the VMware Cloud Foundation deployment. What we are covering in this section primarily the VMware Cloud Foundation deployment requirements. What is the VMware Cloud Foundation bringer process, planning and preparation workbook, planning, deployment parameter sheet, how it's look like, and what all the available tabs, and how we'll fill the details into the deployment parameter sheet. Then deployment process and how we'll upload the deployment parameter sheet into Cloud Builder appliance, and configuration validation by the Cloud Builder appliance. Then in a lab session, we will see deployment of management domain, how we'll actually deploy the management domain. All right, so as we discussed in previous videos as well, there is two type of architecture, the two type of ways where we can deploy the VCF setup. One is consolidated architecture, another is standard architecture. In consolidated architecture, primarily we refer for the small environment where customer just need to create a single cluster, keeping its management VMs and the workload VMs. And with the standard architecture and standard deployment, where later on, like in standard deployment, primarily the management VMs keep in the management cluster under the management domain, and all the customer workload VM will be keeping inside the workload domain cluster. So later on, if a customer want to transform their data center from consolidated architecture to standard architecture, they can easily migrate their VMs, the workload VMs primarily. Okay, so when we talk about the consolidated architecture deployment, in this consolidated architecture, you could see here, this is a single management domain hosted in a single rack, and all my kind of resource pool will be separate resource pool will get created for my management VMs for the workload resource pool, and the NSX Edge resource pool where the NSX Edge appliance will be deployed. The management VMs will be deployed in the management resource pool, and the customer workload VMs will be deployed under the workload resource pool. Okay, so standard architecture deployment example, when we say the altogether my management domain will be separate, and there could be number of workload domains available as per the limitation of VCF that we discussed in the previous video. As per the VCF limitation, like there could be 15 workload domains. Out of 15, one would be your management, plus 14 will be your VI workload domain where a customer would be able to run their VMs. Additionally, they can create separate 10 workload domain, 5.x onwards, with the different single sign-on domain. So within a standard deployment architecture, a cluster could be a standard cluster, or I would say the standalone cluster, or a cluster could be stretched across the multiple racks to maintain the rack aware failure within a single region. That's how the standard deployment works. Well, when we talk about the deployment components perspective, the deployment component, especially for management domain, we require the minimum 4 ESXi host, one vCenter server, 3 NSX manager, SDDC manager, and a vCenter data store, and at least one vSphere cluster. However, we can make more clusters, like during the bring up process, one vSphere cluster will get created. Under that one vSphere cluster, that will having the 4 nodes. for ESXi node. On the top of that, my vCenter, my HDDC manager, my NSX appliances, and my all the management VMs will be get deployed. Later on, if you want to create additional cluster within management domain, that's flexibility we also available, but that will be using the same construct kind of the vCenter server and NSX that is available in your management domain. When we talk about VI workload domains, you can create VI workload domain to run the customer workload VM. Each workload domain, you have a choice of selecting the types of storage: vSAN, NFS, vVol, VMFS, or FC. These all are the flavors of storage that you can use while you are deploying any VI workload domain cluster under a workload domain. So each cluster have the default limit that is set it by the VMware. Does not matter whether that is my management cluster or that is under a VI workload domain cluster. As we discussed in previous slide also, there could be multiple VI workload domain could be created, and each VI workload domain have number of clusters under the same vCenter server and under the same NSX construct. Same way, if you are going to create another workload domain, inside this workload domain, there would be another vCenter server and another NSX. That could be provide the common functionality across multiple clusters in the workload domain. The limits are defined as per the VMware vSphere limits, like how many hosts or how many clusters could be managed by the vCenter server or by the NSX. Moving forward, if we'll see the deployment flow, how it's going to be deployed, like when we talk about the VCF single instance deployment, when we say the single instance, one instance of VCF, how it will get deployed. So single instance deployment means we are deploying the we are deploying the first management domain. So first of all, what you need to do is deploying the management domain. That is your first task. First of all, you have to deploy the Cloud Builder appliance. And the next task, what you need to do is imaging your ESXi with the help of VIA, VMware Imaging Appliance. That is the inbuilt service in your Cloud Builder. Or you can separately, as per the VCF BOM, you can separately image your ESXi host. Then just pushing the XLS sheet or the deployment parameter sheet into Cloud Builder appliance, what it's going to build for you, it's going to build you the entire SDDC stack, software defined stack. What it is going to install, it will configure vSAN, it will configure vCenter server, NS3, NSX manager, and one HDDC manager. So that's how your management domain will be created. The second task, if you want to deploy the vRealize suite or ARIA suite in your environment, this is the second action, or I would say the day one action. Once this entire setup will get built up through HDDC manager, first of all, you have to install the ARIA suite lifecycle manager. But before installing the ARIA suite lifecycle manager, what you have to do is you have to deploy the NSXT edge nodes, EDGE. We will talk much detail about the edge nodes, what these are. These are primarily the components that we required for creating the T0 and T1 components in your NSXT environment. And on the top of it, you have to create that we refer as AVN, Application Virtual Network, but just for leveraging the ARIA suite lifecycle manager. So once you'll deploy edge, under the edge, you have to configure AVN, that we refer as application. AVNs are refer as Application Virtual Network. Application Virtual Network that you have to create inside your edge nodes. Then ARIA suite lifecycle manager or vRealize suite workspace 1, then rest of the vRealize component. So this deployment is same, does not matter whether you are using a standalone cluster or you are using the stretched cluster environment. When we say the stretched cluster environment, your environment will be spanned across the multiple multiple availability zone. That's what we refer as a stretched cluster. Okay, so third thing is you can deploy the VI workload domain, and under the VI workload domain, all your VLI shoot will be work as it is. You don't need to deploy these separately. So for deploying the VI workload domain, first of all, again, you have to image your ESXi host. You can choose the primary storage as per your choice. It could be vSAN, NFS, VMFS, FC, or vVol, not iSCSI FC. Then through the SDDC manager, you will be going to deploy the rest of the component like the new vCenter server, NSX manager within your workload domain. So this all primarily done during the building process, and later on further you can configure the edge nodes, separate edge nodes for your workload domain, VI workload domain cluster. When I say VI workload domain cluster, creation of new workload domain means you are creating at least one cluster that will primarily have NSX manager and vCenter server. Keep in mind, for workload domain, we don't need to create the separate VLI shoot stack or separate ARIA shoot lifecycle manager. All the components will get integrated with your workload domain environment. Well, the VCF in federated deployment, in federated architecture, when we say the federated architecture, it means that you will deploy two separate VCF instances, but on the top, like this is my VCF1 and this is the VCF2, two separate VCF instances, but on the top of it, you will be deploying the NSX, a unified NSX layer that we refer as NSX Global Manager. There would be the local manager available in both the environment, but yes, they will be integrated with the global manager for the services. Okay, for the common networking services. So the same way you will follow kind of the architecture. So again, you have to deploy separate VCF instances on kind of two different locations or within same location. And if you want to make the federated environment, so almost the deployment process is same as per standard cluster previously. But what is the additional thing? The additional thing is you have to deploy the NSX Global Manager manually. Then you have to integrate this NSX Global Manager with your local manager so that you can use the kind of common networking services, kind of common T0, kind of common T1, whenever you are planning any disaster recovery solution. So your VMs will be cut over on the secondary VCF instance without changing the networking constructs. So these are the different way of deploying the VCF instances in kind of federated environment or a single instance VCF deployment. Okay, so what all primary things we have to consider while we are building the VCF environment? The primary thing is planning and preparation workbook. The planning and preparation workbook primarily used for plan the entire environment. When we say the plan the entire environment, it means that what would be my infra services, all details, kind of AD, DNS, or NTP. I'm sorry, my touchpad is not working properly, so I'll change it very soon. NTP and all. Then all the FQDN records of my environment, fully qualified domain name records in the DNS, and all the IP schema, what kind of cluster I am planning, what would be the service records, all the details I have to mention in the deployment planning and preparation workbook. And out of that, I am using further that planning and preparation workbook reference for creating the deployment parameter workbook. That's primarily a Excel format, or that could be further converted into JSON, and that we will supply into the Cloud Builder appliance when we are building up the day zero cluster. When we say day zero cluster, it is your management domain first cluster. Then then bring up process, Cloud Builder. That's what we're talking about, like in multiple times. Cloud Builder will be used primarily for day zero deployment. Then bring up process. and day 0 task for the deployment, and the greenfield deployment consideration, what all things we should be consider. Okay, move ahead. From prerequisite perspective, we have to keep ready kind of the external infrastructure environment, all DNS, all FQDN records required for deploying the VCF component, all forward kind of records in forward lookup zone, reverse lookup zone, and TP service for time synchronization, and external certificate authority if we want to use the external CA to replace the certificates of the default certificate of the ESXi, and later on we want to change the certificate for the VCF component, kind of your SDDC manager, vCenter server, or NSX and rest kind of area shown. Network perspective, we do need to configure all the VLAN and subnet. Like there is one more service that we refer as external environment, that is my DHCP. That will use for assigning the IPs to the tap interface. However, that's an optional from 5.0 onwards. You can use the manual IP to assign the IPs to the tap interface. Jumbo frame, wherever we require MTU, we have to set. BGP should be implement top of rack switch. All network connectivity and all designs should be properly in plan in advance. Okay, so well, again, for Cloud Builder is the one of the primary component that we have, yeah, Cloud Builder is primarily an appliance that we have to download from VMware site, and later on we have to fill all the parameters as per whatever we have configured in the deployment and planning workbook. The same parameter we have to give the deployment parameter workbook. Okay, so again, don't get confused. Deployment planning preparation workbook is different, that all details we have to capture from the customer, and parameter workbook that will supply into the Cloud Builder appliance for the build process of VMware Cloud Foundation. Okay, all right, so when we say this, if we want to use third-party CA, so for using the third-party CA, we have to replace the default certificate for ESXi. Okay, so I'll do that. That's all process have been given there. You have to access your SSL into SSL directory. Just take the backup of your original certificate and replace the certificate through the external CA. Okay, and the whole process is available into VCF deployment guide. And later on, what you need to do is, if you are using external CA, convert the deployment parameter Excel sheet through the using Cloud Builder. This is the command in go to Cloud Builder and run this entire command. Your Excel will convert into JSON file, and just edit that JSON file back and give and add the details of your certificate authority into the JSON before uploading into deployment parameter sheet. So that's an important point. If you are using external CA, for using the external CA, you cannot directly export the push the your deployment parameter sheet into Excel. You have to convert it into JSON, give the CA detail, and upload it back during the deployment process. Okay, so what are the key deployment process? Key deployment step: plan and preparation, the planning preparation workbook. Then deploy the Cloud Builder appliance, fill your all details into deployment parameter sheet or deployment parameter workbook. Prepare your ESXi host. Primary for ESXi host preparation, just give bare minimum the management IP to your ESXi host and set NTP service start and stop with host. And then deploy your management domain using the Cloud Builder appliance. Okay. So this is the glimpse what all details we can fill in the planning and preparation workbook. The planning preparation workbook will be look like this, where you have to give all details, kind of multi-integration model, what kind of license we are using, if we are using DHCP for assigning IP addresses to the tunnel endpoint interface to ESXi host. Management domain, how it's using, it's a consolidated architecture or a standard architecture. Do you want to use external CA? So that all kind of details, kind of management, post-deployment certificate details, the VLAN IDs for the different network, the subnet IDs that you have to replace with your original values. These are all the sample values. You just replace it by the original values. Just align with the customer and do that. Then kind of what would be the host name, data store name, network mapping, user credentials, that all details you have to work with your customer and fill and just get a sign off from the customer. These are the resources what we need. Then management domain sizing, network input, host IP address, SDDC input, Active Directory inputs. So there is number of parameters are available in planning and preparation workbook. For the version you are deploying, you can download the planning and preparation workbook directly from the VMware site. Okay, so this is all you have to deploy, and let's have a look on deployment parameter sheet as well. The deployment parameter sheet primarily will use for during the bring up process. So let's have a look how the deployment parameter sheet looks like. So again and again, I'm saying don't get confused. Planning and preparation workbook. Planning and preparation workbook, you have to work with customer and get all the details, and on the basis of that, you just keep on moving for building up your VCF environment. So this is our deployment parameter workbook. This is different from planning and preparation workbook. So what all the detail is here? It's saying you have to fill all the details. If any cells turn wrong, I mean the wrong value you have filled, that will turn into the red. So first of all, here is the credentials. When we say credentials, the credentials you can fill as per your environment requirement, but you have to follow certain policy before filling up the value in these cells. So these are the credentials for your ESXi host, for your vCenter server, for the NSX, for the SDDC manager. Like for example, I click here, so it's telling me there should be at least 12 character password, one lowercase, one uppercase, digit, special character. So all the details you fill here in host and network sections. You have to give the management network VLAN ID, actual as per your environment, vMotion network VLAN ID, vSAN network VLAN ID, and all the port group name, whatever port group you want to create, you have plan with customer, CIDR notification, gateway value, and the MTU value. If you want to use the jumbo frame for vMotion vSAN network, you have to enable the jumbo frame on top of rack switch. So this is the detail of vSphere standard switch. This is the VDS detail. And here you can see the network profile. So under network profile, there is 3 types of profile you will get. Profile 1, where profile 1, all my traffic by default will be leveraging only 2 physical NICs available in your ESXi host. If I will choose profile 2, under profile 2, you will see except your vSAN traffic, rest of the traffic, like there would be there could be 2 or 4 NICs. The two NICs will use rest of the traffic, and rest of the 2 NICs primarily used for the vSAN. And if I'll select the profile 3, it's again a 4 NIC setting. Under 4 NIC setting, except your overlay, NIC 1 and NIC 2 will be taken care of the entire traffic, and your overlay traffic will be managed by the VM NIC 2 and 3. Like first 2 NICs for managing overlay traffics, and rest of the 2 NICs for managing the overlay traffic. Now come to the ESXi section. By default, by using the deployment parameter sheet, the 4 nodes configuration is required. You can fill the 4 node host detail, all the management IP, vSAN IPs, vMotion IPs. If you want to validate the thumbprint during the installation process, you have to just export the thumbprint, and you have to copy all the thumbprint value and here. And if you don't want to validate the thumbprint value during the bring up process, click it no, just keep it. It will not validate your ESXi thumbprints during the installation. Then host overlay, then if you want to assign the IP address through DHCP server, give the VLAN ID, and if you are using kind of static IP pool, you have to fill here all the static IP pool details. But keep in mind, if you will choose no, it means that all your tap interface IP will be assigned through the DHCP that is available already into your network. But if you don't want to use the DHCP assigning tap IP, you can configure the static IP pool in your NSX. So NSX will automatically create a static IP pool to assign the tap IP addresses. Then under deployment parameter section, we have to fill again the details for your DNS, your NTP, your DNS zone, license key. If you want to use subscription based license, click it no. But if you don't want to use subscription based, you want to use perpetual, yes, for subscription based license it is yes. If you don't want to use subscription, not if you do not want to use subscription based, give the license key here. This is my vCenter detail. This is my vCenter size. It's matter as per your environment. FQD and IP. These are my data center name. These are the resource pool being created by default. If you want to change, you can change and you can customize. This is the NSX detail. It's going to deploy 3 manager for controller and 1 VIP for NSX virtual interface IP. That's a load balancer IP and HDDC manager. So in that way, you have to fill this deployment parameter sheet as per your environment. Then during the bring up process, you have to use this sheet and you have to upload into the Cloud Builder appliance. But if you want to use the external CA certificate, then this sheet is not going to be used for, especially for ESXi. If you have replaced certificate in advance, you have to convert this Excel into JSON file. The process I told you previously in this video, how to create a JSON, and under the JSON you have to give the details. Beside that, if you want to make more customization, the values being shown here into the deployment parameter sheet or deployment parameter workbook. Like for example, here you want to use 8 NICs or something like that. So you can make the customization accordingly into the JSON file, and you can upload into the Cloud Builder appliance during the bring up process. Okay, so this is the important thing you have to consider in mind. Then your Cloud Builder appliance will play a crucial role, like during the just to bring up your entire management cluster during the VCF build. Well, so Cloud Builder just primarily typically using for building up your management cluster only. Once it will get deployed, later on you can shut down it and you can remove from the environment. Okay, how it will deploy? It's a simple way. You can deploy the Cloud Builder appliance in any kind of external hypervisor, ESXi workstation, or locally in your laptop by using the type 2 hypervisor. And the only thing here is the Cloud Builder appliance should be communicating with your ESXi host, so that it can easily reach to respective ESXi host, and would be easy for you just to, one moment. Yeah, so this Cloud Builder appliance should communicate with your ESXi host so that easily it can deploy the management cluster. Okay, so we will meet you in the lab environment. So how to deploy, I will be showing you the way of deploying in the next upcoming video inside the lab environment. Okay, here is the quick recap. What we discussed today, like what all prerequisites for the VMware Cloud Foundation, what are the deployment architecture, it could be standard, it could be the federated environment, the key deployment steps, what are the way of onboarding the entire VCF, planning preparation work guide, planning and deployment parameter sheet, and VMware Cloud Foundation management deployment that we are going to see soon into the lab in our upcoming video. The important thing, before I will close this video, I want to show you here something. Just allow me some time. You have to go in VMware documentation site and just search for the VMware release notes. So once you will search for the VMware release notes, under the VMware release notes, you will get the VCF deployment guide. So you will just choose the VCF deployment guide, and the deeper side, you follow all the steps that has been given here, like how you will use the ESXi installation, how you will prepare the ESXi, how you gonna to configure the certificate for ESXi, okay, and what all are the parameters you need to fill detail into the deployment parameter workbook. Then there is a section of troubleshooting VMware Cloud Foundation deployment. under this, we can see kind of logs, and this is inside the Cloud Builder applies. You can just have a lookup of all the bring up logs, what's happening, just logging into just doing putty in your Cloud Builder appliance, and just run these commands. So it's helping you like collecting the log, and if you have some issues during the deployment section. So I would definitely recommend you just go through the entire VCF deployment guide too much in details, like what all things we need for preparing the VCF deployment environment. Yeah, by saying this comment, I would like to close my video, and thank you very much for your passion. Yeah, I would definitely kind of my request and my suggestion to like this video, comments where you feel the area of improvisation, share with your friends, subscribe and press the bell notification so that you will get the new videos soon for the entire VCF stack. So stay tuned with us. We are coming up with lot of informative videos for you. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.